The nights on the street had a way of swallowing sound. The cars that roared by during the day became distant murmurs. The voices of strangers faded into the wind, and the world seemed to hold its breath until morning. For Lily, those nights were both her enemy and her only constant. She learned the rhythm of the city's cold, the way the concrete seemed to steal heat from her bones, and how to keep herself small enough to avoid the wrong kind of attention. At 15, home was a memory she tried not to touch, because it hurt too much. She carried a battered backpack with everything she owned, 3 worn shirts, a notebook with a bent spiral, and a photo of her younger self from a school field trip, the last time she'd worn a real smile. Hunger had become part of her body, like a shadow that followed her no matter how far she walked. Still, she went to school most days. It was the one place she could feel human, even if she sat quietly at the back, afraid someone might notice how little she belonged. It was during one of those unnoticed mornings that Ms. Carter first spoke to her. She didn't ask about grades or attendance. She asked if Lily had eaten. Something about that question cracked open a door inside Lily she didn't even know was there. She wanted to lie, but the truth spilled out anyway, half sentences about staying at a friend's couch, about not always knowing where she'd sleep. Ms. Carter didn't press. She simply said she was glad Lily was there and invited her to come by after class. That afternoon, Lily found herself sitting in a small office that smelled faintly of coffee and chalk dust. Ms. Carter slid a sandwich across the desk without ceremony, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. They didn't talk much that day, but the silence felt different from the kind she knew. It wasn't cold or heavy. It was the kind that said you could rest here for a while. For weeks, Lily visited the office after class, sometimes for food, sometimes just to sit. Ms. Carter began asking questions not about her past, but about her future. Did she like reading? What subjects made her curious? One day, she asked what Lily would do if she could do anything at all. The question felt too big, but the answer that came was simple. She wanted to go to college. Saying it aloud felt both foolish and dangerous, like hoping for something the world might snatch away. But Ms. Carter didn't laugh. She nodded slowly, as if Lily had just told her something possible. And for the first time in years, Lily let herself wonder if maybe it was. The weeks that followed felt like stepping onto a bridge that hadn't fully formed yet. Every step forward was uncertain, but Ms. Carter walked beside Lily, as if the path had always been there. She began helping Lily piece together her plans, signing up for SAT prep at the library, applying for meal vouchers, even finding safe places where she could study after school. Still, survival had its own weight. Lily worked part-time at a corner store, her shifts stretching late into the night. She learned to sleep in short bursts on buses, in library chairs, and sometimes at a shelter if there was a free bed. The exhaustion gnawed at her, and there were days she wanted to quit. But quitting meant surrendering to the same hopelessness that had chased her from her old life. And she wasn't ready to let it win. Ms. Carter had a way of reminding her why she was trying. When Lily's SAT scores came back higher than she dared imagine, Ms. Carter celebrated, not with loud words, but with quiet pride. She told her about scholarships, about schools that looked beyond bank accounts to see the person. And then she said something that planted itself in Lily's heart. Harvard. It sounded ridiculous. Lily laughed at the idea, shaking her head as if to knock the thought loose. People like her didn't go to Harvard. People like her stayed invisible. But Ms. Carter looked at her with a steady certainty that made the impossible feel less absurd. She told Lily that even if the chances were slim, trying was an act of hope, and hope was worth every effort. Applications became Lily's new survival task. She wrote essays late at night in the hum of the corner store, her words sometimes smudged with fatigue. She told her story in pieces, never the whole truth, just enough to show how far she had come. It was strange to see her life laid out in sentences, to realize that the girl she was writing about had endured more than she ever stopped to acknowledge. There were rejections from other schools, thin envelopes that made her heart sink. Each one was a reminder of the distance between where she stood and where she dreamed to be. But each time, Ms. Carter would remind her that the journey was not over, that sometimes a closed door was simply a turn in the path. In the quiet of winter, as snow softened the harsh edges of the streets, Lily mailed the envelope to Harvard. She didn't believe it would change anything, but deep down, a small ember of hope refused to go out. The letter came in the spring, tucked between bills and flyers in the mailbox of the shelter where Lily had been staying. She almost didn't open it right away. The weight of the envelope felt dangerous, too heavy for hope, too light for certainty. She took it to a quiet corner, her hands trembling as she tore it open. Her eyes found the words before her mind caught up. "We are pleased to inform you." The rest blurred, drowned out by the sound of her own heartbeat. She sat there for a long time, the letter resting in her lap, afraid to move in case it all vanished. The streets, the cold nights, the endless hunger of it suddenly felt like a distant country she had somehow escaped. The first semester at Harvard was harder than she imagined. The classrooms were filled with polished confidence, and Lily carried the invisible weight of her past with her to every lecture. She sometimes skipped meals, not because she had to, but because old habits whispered that comfort was temporary. Yet, slowly, she began to breathe easier. Professors noticed her questions. Classmates invited her to study groups. She even found herself laughing, real, unguarded laughter that startled her when it came. For years passed in the rhythm of essays, exams, and late-night library sessions. She worked 2 jobs, stretched every dollar, and leaned on scholarships like lifelines. Ms. Carter visited once, beaming in the way only someone who had believed all along could. Graduation day was bright, the air warm with June. Lily stood in her cap and gown, surrounded by a sea of black robes and restless energy. The crowd erupted when names were called, but she barely heard the applause. Instead, she looked toward the horizon, thinking of the girl who once huddled on a cold street corner, wondering if life had anything left to offer her. When her name was read, she walked across the stage, the diploma firm in her hands. It wasn't victory over the world, it was victory over the voice inside her that had once insisted she was nothing. That night, back in her small apartment, she placed the diploma on the wall, not for guests or for proof, but for herself. It was a quiet reminder that relentless hope had carried her further than fear ever could. And though she had reached Harvard, she knew the real achievement was believing she deserved to be there. Sometimes the most powerful journeys are the ones no one sees, those fought in silence, step by uncertain step. Lily's path from the streets to Harvard wasn't built on luck alone, but on the stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today. It's a reminder that hope is not fragile, it is the thread that can pull us out of the deepest darkness. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a spark of encouragement. Like, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that prove change is always possible.